Hey everyone, I'm Bradford of the Penalties of Personal Finance. In today's video, we're going to be talking about how to fill out IRS Form 4868, which is the automatic extension for time to file for your individual U.S. tax return. Now, fortunately, the form in itself is actually rather simple to be able to fill out. It's just a couple of lines. But before we go into that section, there are a couple sections of the instructions that I want to cover so that way you have all the information you need before you fill out the form and submit it to the IRS. Now, looking at Form 4868 right here for tax year 2024, for filing in calendar year 2025, here's the form. Now, this is one of the few forms that I've seen with the IRS where it has both the instructions and the form itself all in one document, at least in this PDF I got on their website. So starting out, first thing, it says there are 3 ways that you can request an automatic extension to be able to file your taxes later. The first one, you can either pay all or part of your estimated income tax due. And if you do that, you don't even have to fill out this form. You are automatically granted the 6-month extension if you live in the US, 4 months if you are not living in the United States. Second, you can file this form electronically, or third, you can file this form through the mail. And you can enclose it in payment, but it does say that part is optional. So you can still file this without attaching the payment, and you will still get that automatic 6-month extension to be able to file your individual tax return. Now, there is this note right here that if you are a fiscal tax or taxpayer, you must file a paper form 4868. You are not going to be able to e-file this form to be able to get the automatic extension to file your taxes. Now, that's not going to apply out to the mass majority of people, but if you do know that you are on a fiscal year, just be aware of that limitation. So continuing down here with the rest of the general instructions. So it says the purpose of the form right here, I've kind of already talked about it, but it's going to give you 6 months for if you're out of the country to be able to file your individual tax return. The other thing, what do you have to do to be able to qualify for this extension? There's 3 things you have to do. First, you have to properly estimate your 2024 tax liability. You have to enter your total tax liability on line 4 of Form 4868. And 3, file this Form 4868 on the regular due date of your return. Now, in general, the due date for all individual taxes is going to be April 15th. Now, if it falls on a weekend or some sort of holiday, then you're going to just roll that onto the next business day. And that will be the deadline for both your individual taxes that you actually have to file them, as well as if you are requesting an extension, you have to have that extension filed by that deadline. Now, this next section right here, they have a big caution. I highlighted it in red because I cannot emphasize it enough. Even though you are getting an extension to be able to file your taxes and you are avoiding the late filing penalties, you still must, I repeat, you must pay the taxes that you owe on time. This does not grant you a delay, a waiver, an exemption to pay your taxes on time. I know that seems a little counterintuitive. If I haven't filed my taxes, how do I know how much I actually have to pay? Well, that's kind of, the IRS is leaving that in your boat as to how you figure that out, but you still have to pay your taxes that you are due by the tax filing deadline, the standard deadline, April 15th, or whatever the date is based on weekends or holidays. So just be aware of that. Now, we're actually going to skip past the part where I filled it out, and there's a couple other things that I want to make you aware of. First part, why are we even filling out this form? Because there is a late filing penalty if you do not have this form in there. So what is that penalty? It's going to be 5% of the amount due for each month. Maximum penalty is 25%. If your return is more than 60 days late, the minimum penalty is going to be $510 or your actual tax amount that is due, whichever is smaller. Now, the other thing that I had highlighted in red, late payment penalty. It's going to be half of 1% up to a maximum of 25% of the amount that you actually owe. So if you owe $1,000, the maximum amount penalty can be an additional $250. But that's a pretty big amount. So instead of just owing $1,000, now you owe $1,250. Now, if you owe more than that, obviously that amount is going to go up. So just be aware of that. Now, continuing down on this, some additional instructions. I'm basically going to cover all these up top when we go through how to fill out the form, but they are there in case you have any questions. It's going to talk about how you can make payments electronically. If you have any questions and if you want a video going over that, let me know in the comments down below. But it is relatively straightforward. Now, if you are paper filing this return, this form itself, you might wonder, how do I know where to send the form? In this example, I said the filer is from Virginia. So you just look down here, where do you live? And then you're gonna look down here. If you are including a payment, it's gonna go in this column. If you're not including a payment, it's gonna go in the second column. So just be aware. So on this one, so let's say I'm from Virginia and I'm including a payment with this 4868, I'd be sending it to this PO box in Kentucky. If I'm not making a payment, I would be sending it to the Department of the Treasury, Internal Revenue Service Center in Kansas City. So with that out of the way, it's going to talk about how, so if you're not mailing with just the regular mail, USPS, there are a couple different options that are included that are private services. Is basically going to be FedEx, DHL, and then UPS. Those are your private options to be able to mail this form in if you're not using the United States Postal Service. Now, like I said earlier, this is actually a relatively simple form to fill out. There's only a couple lines that you have to fill out. So it's this entire thing right here. This is it. This is all you have to fill out. Starting at the top, if you have something that is a non-standard calendar year, the fiscal year that's your own, you could put that in right here. Part 1, what's your name? I hope you know what that is. And then it's going to be your address, where you live. You're going to include your social security number, and then 3 spouse social security number. That is only if you're doing a married filing jointly return. If you're doing married filing separately, you're going to leave that section blank. But then your spouse is going to have to file this on their own. 4, estimate of your total tax liability for 2024. That's going to go in here. 5, how many payments have you already made? That should be on your W-2, assuming you've done that, or quarterly tax payments if you've already made those. But if you have already made quarterly tax payments, you don't have to file this form because you are automatically granted a tax filing extension. Balance due, some simple math. This line minus that line. So in this one, our John Smith is going to owe $1,559. And then amount you're paying. So you don't have to pay, but if you are including payments with this, it's just going to go in that amount. Pay as much as you are able. Even if you're not able to pay the entire amount, pay as much as you can afford at that time, because it's just going to decrease the total amount of penalty that you're going to end up paying. And then check here for 8 if you're out of the country and a U.S. citizen. And then 9, check here if you file Form 1040-NR non-resident and you didn't receive wages as an employee subject to U.S. income tax withholding. And that's it. This form is relatively simple to file. Now, I wouldn't recommend filing a paper form just because this is one of the forms that is supported by the IRS free fillable forms on their website. You just make a quick account. It's not very difficult. And then you can just e-file this same day that you fill it out, especially since it's only 9 lines in here. And if you live in the US and you're a US citizen, you don't even have to worry about these last 2 right here. So that covers how to fill out IRS Form 4868, which is going to get you that 6-month extension to be able to file your taxes. But please don't forget to actually file your taxes. And if you have any questions on some ways that you can be able to do that completely for free, check out this playlist we have right here. I want to thank you for joining me today. And from your first penny to your first million, we're here to help.